The protagonist Alec, tired and wounded after a fierce fight with a dragon, rejoices in his victory because it brought him closer to his cherished goal, to breaking the curse. Coming to his senses, the hero realizes that he has spent 3 whole days on this battle, but his safety comes first. Opening the map, he studies the next steps. All that remains to save the kingdom is to climb the tower and find the princess's bedroom. As he climbs the spiral staircase, lit only by the light of the sun from the small windows, he learns that to break the curse he must kiss the princess on the lips. Upon learning this, Alec realizes that slaying the dragon is a more significant achievement than the kiss. Clutching the map and pulling himself together, Alec pushes open the heavy steel doors and, blinded by the sunlight, enters the room. Walking deep into the bedroom, Alec saw a bed the width of the entire room, decorated with lace and curtains. On it lay 7 sleeping beauties. Expecting to see only one princess, Alec is taken aback by the number of girls in the room. Remembering the map he had been clutching in his hand all this time, he realized that the number of princesses had never been mentioned. Nowhere was it written that there would be exactly one. Calming down a bit, Alec moves closer to the center of the bed, and as he looks at the girls lying there, he realizes that they are all indeed princesses. Undaunted, the knight leans back on the bed, while realizing that to break the curse, each beauty must be awakened. Overcome with guilt, he bent over the princess. The lips of the savior and the reclining girl touched in a kiss. The kissed princess, named Claire, awoke from the spell and raised herself on the bed. When she saw the knight, she wondered exactly who he was. Alec, coming to his senses, was about to start telling about himself, but his story was suddenly interrupted by a pillow that flew into his face. The princess, in her turn, says that guys are not allowed to enter this bedroom, swinging a bowl of fruit at the protagonist. Alec waves it away, trying to say something. However, Claire won't listen to him and tries to wake up her sisters. After a few moments, she realizes that the sisters do not wake up despite her best efforts. Alec, having removed the fruit bowl from his head, tells Claire in raised tones that he is the prince of the kingdom of Rdbekia and tells her that he has come to help. Not understanding exactly what the prince is supposed to help with, Claire interjects. Alec tries to rise from his knees and explains to the princess that the entire kingdom has been asleep for 30 years because of a witch's curse. And in order to dispel the evil spell, he killed the dragon that guarded the castle and also woke Claire. In the end, the protagonist sums it all up by saying that the curse has been broken and everyone will soon wake up. Trying to reassure the princess, he says that everything is fine now and we just have to wait a little longer. Looking up, Alec saw that Claire was no longer in front of him. She was coming down the spiral staircase. The knight tries to catch up with the princess and asks her about where she is going. Because of fatigue and wounds after a hard fight with the dragon, the hero cannot fully catch up with the girl, but also tries not to lose sight of her. Upon reaching the throne room, Claire sees her parents and servants in an unconscious state. She covers her mouth with her hands upon seeing her relatives. Alec tells the girl not to worry and to wait a little more time. However, for Claire it was not fear, but rather elation. The girl could not contain herself and pronounced that what she sees is amazing. The knight didn't expect to see such a reaction from the princess, so he was very surprised. After running up to the servants and studying them, the princess talks about how everything that is happening is more like a fairy tale. She marvels that it all happened to them the moment they were asleep. Afterward, Claire abruptly remembers the prince who was standing behind her. She tries to justify herself and talks about how the event that happened is really horrible. But Alec realizes that these words are lies and she is actually having fun. Thinking of the other girls in the bedroom, the protagonist asks about whether they are all princesses. When he received an affirmative answer from Claire, he was surprised that there were 7. The protagonist thought about his assignment and said that to break the curse, he needed to wake up all the girls who were in the bedroom. The princess agreed with him. As they approached the stairs, she hurried the guy so they could get back to the bedroom sooner. While they were climbing the stairs, the girl addressed him. She asked about why Alec woke her up first. For an answer to this question, the guy could not find the words. This answer did not satisfy Claire, so she began to ask more questions. She asked how Alec had broken the curse and whether he was a magician. The last question was only to the prince's advantage. He said that magic should not be shown to the common people and asked the girl not to go into the bedroom while he woke the other princesses. Alec then goes into the bedroom and closes the door, realizing that this was a very dangerous situation. If Claire found out that he had kissed her without permission, she would probably be shocked. After thinking about it, the hero realizes that there are 6 more girls left to wake up in order to break the evil spell. He tries to come to terms with this thought, cheers himself up, and walks over to the bed. Alec kisses all the remaining princesses and they awaken from their eternal sleep. The 6 princesses remaining in the room awaken from a 30-year sleep. Claire, who has remained in the hallway, waits for her sisters to awaken, watching a bird that has suddenly flown into the tower window. As she marvels at the nice weather, she hears a thumping sound coming from the room behind her. It was Alec, fallen from a slap from one of the newly awakened princesses. Her name was Charlotte. Opening the doors to the room, Claire ran into the bedroom to warn her sisters that Alec was not the intruder. Princess Charlotte did not expect to see her sister outside the bedroom, so she was taken aback. Claire explained that the man sitting on the floor was their savior who really wanted to help them. Unable to understand the situation, Charlotte turns to her sister to understand what is going on, but her attention was most caught by Claire's outfit, causing the question to follow, where did she go dressed like that? But it didn't really matter because except for Alec and the sisters, all the people of the kingdom are still asleep because of the spell. Ignoring Claire's words, Charlotte turns her head toward the stranger and tells the other princesses that having a stranger in her bedroom embarrasses her. She grudgingly asks if Alec wants to leave the room, since they need to change. Charlotte ends up hitting the prince. Alec, leaving the tower to the singing of the birds, is surprised to think that he still managed to wake all the princesses unnoticed. Rejoicing in his victory, the hero plunges into his memories. In them, some woman asks if he is awake. She is Alec's mother. Approaching him, the mother asks what is happening to his face and expresses her speculation that Alec's condition is the fault of his older brother. The prince responds negatively to his mother's words, blaming himself for his weakness. He talks about how his brother is merely worried about him. After these words, the mother sighs in relief and asks Alec to come closer. Taking a seat on a chair, she offers to read her son a bedtime book. Upon hearing this suggestion, Alec is surprised to hear her say that it is too childish. Sitting at the protagonist's bedside, the mother begins the story of Sleeping Beauty. After a while, when the candle on the table was beginning to burn out, the mother finished her story and answered the young prince's questions. One of them was whether the people of Amaryllis were still asleep. To this, the mother answered in the affirmative. When Alec thought about the fate of the protagonist of the story, a tear ran down his cheek. He shouted enthusiastically that he would save this country from the spell, for all he had to do was to defeat the dragon. But the little prince does not yet have enough strength to do so. The mother hugs the protagonist, saying that he will definitely succeed, but for this he needs to sleep more and gain strength. After that, the events are moved forward 10 years. One of the palace attendants informs the prince that the king has summoned him to the castle. After bidding farewell to his late mother, Alec goes to the king. The young prince enters the throne room and sees King Rebecca in front of him. The latter in turn asks our hero if he really wants to go on this journey alone. Alec does not even think about his father's question and exclaims that he is ready to set out on the journey despite the consequences that may arise. However, the prince's confidence did not last long. The second prince, who is the protagonist's brother, inquired whether it was wise to send Alec on this task alone if he might end up failing. The brother stated that many knights who relied on their own strength had previously gone on this journey, but none of them had survived the terrible battle with the dragon. This speech was interrupted by the ringing laughter of the first prince, who was the oldest of the brothers. He said that the fate of being slain by the dragon was far better than rotting in the castle walls all his life, then pointed out the main character's flaws, saying that he is stupid and his sword skills are not the best, but the assignment is a way for him to do at least something useful in his life. After evaluating all possible events and the objections of his sons, the king eventually allowed the young prince to go on the journey, but he set an important condition. It was that Alec must return to the kingdom in a year, for that should be enough time for him to dispel the curse and test his strength. After receiving his father's approval, the protagonist thanked him and asked him to entrust this task to him. The gates of the castle opened and Alec saddled his horse and set off on his long journey. He wished to defeat the dragon and annex Amaryllis to his kingdom. At that beautiful moment, only the exclamations of the prince could be heard outside as he spurred his horse. As our hero moved toward the enchanted kingdom, he was visited more than once by the thought that he was not ready for the battle with the dragon. But now he has no other choice, for he must save everyone. Resigned to his fate, the hero picks himself up. He realizes that, in fact, the dragon is not the only problem. After the curse is broken, the hero will need to convince the people that he is not their enemy. This is where the hero's memories end. Upon leaving the tower, Alec found a guard sleeping at the entrance. The prince was surprised that no one woke up despite the noise. Leaning over to the guard, he asks if the guard is alive. However, he receives no answer. The hero realizes that the spell has not been completely broken, and this takes him by surprise. The young prince's thoughts are interrupted by one of the newly awakened princesses who wonders what is bothering him so much. It was Princess Sierra. Alec, startled, loudly asks the princess at what point she had time to approach, to which he receives only a ringing laugh. Sierra, saying that she changes clothes faster than her sisters, leans over to the prince's face, pulling out an unknown vial. Taking the hero by the chin, she turns his face toward her, and, moving closer, runs her finger over Alec's lips. He did not expect such actions from Sierra, so he hesitated and asked her what exactly she just did. The girl replied that she had merely applied ointment, for the prince had a cut on his lip. Grinning and flirting, the princess asks the knight to tell her if he has any pain. In that case, she can examine him when they are alone. Embarrassed, Alec interrupted Kiera, but their conversation was interrupted by the sisters' footsteps. The other 6 princesses descended from the palace in their finery, who in turn marveled at the weather and apologized for the wait. When everyone had gathered at the entrance to the castle, Claire and Alec took a few steps away from the porch, toward the fountain, where she began the introductions. Pointing to the hero, the princess said that he was the Prince of Rudbeckia and that his name was Alec. A plea flashed through the hero's mind for the other princesses to confide in him. Claire introduced herself next and began the introduction ceremony. Next were Eliza, Mia, and Flora. Rounding out the introductions were Sierra, Charlotte, and Yuko. Raising her hand and addressing Claire as a teacher, Eliza stated that she had a question. She was wondering when they were going to eat. Alec was taken aback by this question, as were the rest of the princesses. Yuko stated that this was not the time for such questions, but Eliza insisted and said that she had not eaten breakfast at all and was hungry. Alec replied that all the cooks were asleep, so no one would be able to prepare the food. The princess was really shocked by this news. Flora asked incredulously about what the hero meant. Wasn't the princess's awakening supposed to wake up the whole country? Alec in turn replied that it was supposed to. However, it was obvious that something was missing. The prince says he did everything according to the legend, but the thorns are not gone and the people are not waking up. That is why it was not clear how much longer it would take for the spell to be completely broken. Alec is determined and declares that he will definitely understand why this happened and asks the princesses not to worry and to wait a little longer. At this point, he is distracted by Claire with her words that she and her sisters are already awake anyway. That is why she proposes to deal with the situation together and asks the consent of the other princesses. They in turn reply that together they will be able to solve it much faster, and just sitting still and waiting is really boring. Alec agrees and says that everyone should try their best. An enthusiastic Claire immediately starts asking how they will start solving the problem. Alec, however, takes a scroll out of his bag and starts thinking about what he might have missed. The scroll in question interested Princess Yuko. Alec tells her that it contains general information about the kingdom of Amaryllis, taken from rumors and legends. Yuko responds by enthusiastically asking if she can read the scroll. At first the prince agrees, but then immediately takes it away from the princess and thinks about how he almost got caught. When asked by Yuko what happened, Alec begins to make excuses, saying that the scroll is all dirty. The princess informs him that the appearance of the paper is not important to her at all. The protagonist is indeed very frightened and thinks that it is too dangerous to carry the scroll with him. His thoughts are interrupted by Flora saying that it is certainly important to study the curse. However, there must be some way to get their lives together first. Indeed, since all the maids are asleep, so they need to do their own cleaning and laundry. Claire states in anticipation how exciting it all is. She then offers to give the prince a tour of the castle, to which he responds positively. At this point, Eliza falls to her knees in frustration, declaring that she is dying, that they will have to do the castle business themselves. A short time later, she runs joyfully into the room, holding food in her hands. However, upon arriving in the kitchen, the other princesses assessed the condition of this room and the food that was in it. After all, it's been 30 years, is all this stuff fit to eat? Alex stated that everything looked and smelled normal at first glance. At this point, Eliza ate an omelet she saw in the kitchen. The prince was very surprised by this. He immediately started asking the princess if she was okay. In response, she excitedly cried out that the omelet was very tasty. Yuko decided to see if everything was really okay, to which Eliza said that the omelet was with cheese and mushrooms. At this moment, Alec wondered if this girl was really a princess. Upon approaching Eliza, the prince notices that she has food left on her face, which he tells the girl, after which she asks the hero to remove the remnants of food from her face. Moving closer to the young man, she begins to hustle him. Alec eventually agrees and removes the omelet from the princess's face. Without wasting a second, Eliza licks the rest of the food off the protagonist's hand, causing him to be shocked. The young man's mind immediately asks, "What is this princess even thinking about?" At that moment, Eliza, who was enjoying her meal, was called by one of her sisters. Alec heard the voice of one of the girls asking if Eliza had found the omelet here. Turning around, the prince sees Yuko in front of him, the one who asked the question. She kneels down and sticks her head in the oven and says that the oven is still warm, but everything is overgrown with ivy. The princess asks what Alec thinks about the situation, but the prince's head was full of other thoughts at that moment, so he immediately starts to justify himself to Yuko, but she doesn't understand what the prince means. After that, the girl declares that food could not sleep the same way as humans. This was a real mystery to her. Alec agreed with Yuko's statement, but in his mind he was thinking that she was the one who was the most mysterious here. Taking out a magnifying glass, the princess began to study the ivy that enveloped their entire kingdom. She began to think about where this plant even came from and why it didn't die without water. Eventually, the girl decided to take the ivy for herself and experiment. Fearing for the young explorer's life, Alec said that it was better not to touch the plant in question, as it might be cursed. But the princess did not pay much attention to these words, for it was interesting for her to find out what it was. After gathering some of the plant in a pouch for the experiment, Yuko says that she doesn't know much, and is sure that there are a lot of interesting things outside the castle. In the end, it turns out that the princess has never been outside the castle walls. This was all because when she and her sisters were born, it was predicted that a curse would fall on the country. That is why they spent their entire lives here, safe and secure. This prediction did indeed come true. After her story, Yuko approached the protagonist, and after looking at him closely, she said that he had a rare eye color. By doing so, she surprised the young man very much. It was indeed the first time the princess had ever seen something like this, which caused her to come even closer to the prince and start examining his eyes under a magnifying glass. Alec was very embarrassed by this behavior of the girl. He said something about Yuko getting too close to him. Their conversation was interrupted by Charlotte saying that they were leaving. Obeying the princess, Alec and Yuko followed her. When everyone left the castle, Flora suggested eating outdoors. Since the weather was nice, the princesses didn't mind. Claire turned to the prince and beckoned him to join her, and they set off. After passing through an archway that was dotted with bushes and ivy, the heroes saw a beautiful picture before them. A clear lake, on the shore of which a large and thick tree was perched. To the side of it could be seen a stone path leading to a bright summer gazebo. Stripping off her bulky dress and stretching, Claire headed as quickly as possible to the lakeshore. When she reached the proper depth, she dove into the water, leaving behind only a splash and a surprised Alec standing behind her. Diving in and taking in a lungful of air, the princess cries out that she has finally fulfilled her dream of swimming in the castle lake. Not wanting to be left behind, Kiera and Eliza ran to their sister in the cold water. Not expecting such behavior from royalty, Alec froze in shock, but came to his senses after an order from Charlotte. She demanded that the young man not look at her with his lustful eyes. Before she could enter the water, Charlotte is doused by a splash created by her sister, but the prank did not please the princess. Yuko, who remains on the shore, notices that the princesses are acting like little children. After this phrase, she puts on a diving mask. When asked by a young man what it is, she replies that it is a mysterious device found in the castle basement. Yuko has been thinking for a long time that it could be used for scuba diving, and she finally has a chance to test it out. Alec had picked up on the fact that the girl was actually very excited about it. Looking around, he saw the little princess beside him. It was Mia, sitting on the grass and holding a teddy bear tightly in her hands. Sighing, Alec realized where she had been all this time. Approaching the princess, the young man asked if she could swim. In response, Mia stated that she did not like moisture. She could never understand how one could swim in a pond with unknown things in it, so she thought her sisters were brave. that said, there is no way she would take such a risk because she is an adult. While Mia was telling the story, a big and beautiful butterfly fluttered above her head the whole time. Afterward, this butterfly landed right on the princess's head, and Alec hurriedly reported it at once. With a shriek, the girl cried. She cried out for the young man to kill the insect quickly. The prince asked the princess to calm down and said he would help her now. He removed the butterfly from Mia's head and released it into the sky. The girl collapsed exhaustedly on the ground, dropping her toy from her hands and began to cry. After that, she immediately jumped up and hugged her savior, saying that this situation was just awful. Raising her crying eyes, she embarrassed the protagonist, from which he did not even know what to answer her. Eventually, Mia grabbed her teddy bear and ran away. The prince was attracted by a strange sound made by the princess, and this made him turn around. It turned out to be Flora, who had just woken up and was yawning. The excited Alec immediately asked what this princess was doing, for she might catch a cold. The girl replied that everyone likes to take a nap in the sun. She asked not to worry about her and said that the prince must be tired after his long journey and battle. Alec agreed with her, and the princess, as if offhandedly, said something about the earth being hard and cold. Taking the hero by the head, she laid him on her lap, from which he was utterly shocked. Flora reported that now Alec would definitely be able to get a good night's rest lying on her lap. He thanked the girl for her concern, but decided that he would be more comfortable lying on the ground. The princess decided to see if he was sure, but at the same moment an unexpected wind blew, lifting the princess's outer garment. Alec was in shock and could not utter a word, but Flora, as if nothing had happened, stood up, apologized and announced that she would go and put on something else, leaving the prince in a dazed state. The young man lay on the grass for a while afterward, thinking that today was indeed a very busy day, and decided to see what was going on in the lake. He sat down on the cliff and watched the princesses swimming. Yes, it was indeed a busy day, although it was quiet. The prince was distracted by a girl coming up behind him. It was Claire, who was looking for him. But her words did not interest the hero too much, for his gaze was fixed on the upper part of the princess's body. However, Claire's clothes were completely wet after bathing, so Alec came to his senses and immediately put his outer clothes on the girl, stating that she might freeze. The princess was surprised by this reaction and thanked him. Soon they sat together at the cliffside and began a conversation about recent events. Claire reported that she still can't believe it's been 30 years. Alec replied that it was necessary to wake everyone else up, and as soon as possible. The princess exclaimed that she completely agreed with him, but it was even a little exciting for her. She felt as if they were alone in the whole world. Immediately after saying that, Claire apologized and said that it sounded strange. However, Alec did understand her reaction to what had happened. After these words, Claire became animated and began to ask the young man about his journey. She wondered why Alec had come here. Was he afraid of the dragon? In his mind, the prince thought that he was very scared, but eventually said that it didn't matter whether he was afraid of the dragon or not. The hero had always dreamed of saving this country. That's why he ended up here. He was really very happy when the princesses opened their eyes, and also stated that he was born to save the kingdom from the spell. After promising that they would definitely remove the evil spell together, he immediately thought about the fact that he didn't really know how to do it. Claire looked at the young man, but at that moment, a strong gust of wind blew away the jacket that Alec had lent to the girl earlier. She immediately tried to catch the outer garment, but slipped. The protagonist shrieked and caught Claire's hand to prevent her from falling. Because of the wind, the valuable scroll that was in the jacket fell into the water, but the princess and the young man unfortunately didn't notice it. Although Alec caught the princess's hand, they ended up unable to hold on and fell off the cliff into the lake. Grabbing Claire by the shoulders, the prince began to ask if she was okay, but then swam away from the girl because of his embarrassment and began apologizing for holding her. The princess lowered her gaze and thanked the young man for his help. Trying to hide his red face, Alec turned around and walked toward the shore, but the girl stopped him by grabbing his shirt and asked him to wait. She wanted the hero to stay in the water with her a little longer. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Sierra, bathing, were chatting about their sister Claire, who had gone off to find the prince. Charlotte asked if it was appropriate to leave her sister with a man they had only met today, to which Sierra stated that it would be fine. During this dialogue, Eliza pulled out of the water, saying that Alec is a really nice guy. But Charlotte didn't trust him, because you can't just figure out what's behind a handsome and cute face. Yuko, who was swimming nearby, noticed a scroll on the water that had previously fallen out of the prince's jacket during a gust of wind. While the other sisters were having a conversation, Alec and Claire stood in the water next to each other without saying a word. There was almost no distance between them. Claire, raising her head and opening her eyes, moved even closer to the prince's face. At that moment they heard a displeased cry from one of the sisters and, startled, turned around. Before them stood the 6 princesses. Claire asked what was wrong with them. It turned out that the sisters had picked up a scroll from the water and read the information it contained. They also learned that Alec had woken them all up with a kiss on the lips. The young man was dumbfounded and could not understand how the scroll ended up in the princess's possession. Justifying himself, he claimed that he had no choice but eventually admitted that he had indeed kissed the girls to break the spell. Yuko immediately realized afterward why Alec had not let her read the scroll that time. The next sister to rebuke Alec was Eliza. She explained to the hero that one should not kiss a girl without her permission, but he understood it perfectly well without her words. Flora's scornful gaze pierced the prince. Looking as if she were an enemy, she uttered that she hadn't expected such a thing from him. Little Mia was standing nearby. She quietly said the word barbarian, but it severely hurt the hero's self-esteem. Kneeling before the princesses, Alec apologized for his actions and said that he did not want to deceive. But they did not affect Charlotte, because such an act is punishable by execution. Pointing to the guilty Alec, she passed her sentence. Since he had killed the dragon, Charlotte pardoned the young man, and only demanded that he return back to his country. She stated that they could break the spell themselves. While Alec listened to his punishment, Eliza noticed that something had happened to Claire. Tears rolled down the princess's cheeks. Alec saw what he feared the most. Claire was crying because of what he had done. Unable to contain her emotions, the girl runs away from the lake, ignoring her sister's pleas to stop. Watching Claire's back, Yuko and Charlotte realize that the event has traumatized her greatly, and they see their sister crying for the first time. Worried, the princesses run after her. Alec apologizes to Claire, but his words ring hollow, for he is alone. The reason he did so was because he is weak of heart. If he had told them the truth earlier, he could have avoided this situation. Realizing that he had ruined his relationship with the princesses, the hero wants to give up, but instantly gives up the idea, because then he would not be able to complete the king's task. If Alec leaves, this kingdom can be taken over by someone else. To avoid this, the hero makes the only right decision. He decides to make peace with the girls. After all, without their trust, he will not be able to break the curse and save the country. After pulling himself together and calming down, Alec realizes that he has never had an experience like this. But he accepts his fate, and will deal with it, even if it's harder than slaying a dragon.